And thank you all for coming out. It's been a really, really cold evening. I guess, you know, the flip side of all of that introduction is I retired 3 years ago, left Toronto, came out here, didn't know what I was going to do with myself, and looked around and I found the biosphere. And funny enough, they were talking to my old company back in Toronto, Plug and Drive, and oh, we found this funny company in Toronto, Plug and Drive, and they're going to come out here and do a big EV expo. And have you ever heard of them? Yeah, sort of. Did sort of hear them. Never thought I would hear of them again. Right? I left Ontario. Right? Anyway, it's a great little happenstance that I've been able to find a home here, not only in Canmore but in the biosphere. And I'm really like I brought booklets and whatnot tonight, and I thought, oh, we might get 5 or 6 people. You know, holy moly, we filled the room. So I'm sort of thrilled to see the interest in that regard. This is your meeting here tonight. You'll probably notice we have several different titles on this. I got some titling on this slide, and one that was on the biosphere site was something, and then so we were calling it many different things. But the prime objective tonight is to answer as many of your questions as possible, give you a bit of information about EVs, get you all excited, and hopefully get you into one at some point. And then at the end, I'm going to talk about a very cool program that was mentioned really briefly here that we have through the biosphere, which will allow you to actually test drive an EV right here in Canmore for free between Evan and I will put that on. So we'll talk about that sort of at the end. So hands up, people, anybody here have a hybrid? Driving a hybrid. There we go. Kind of a little sip of the Kool-Aid. You're getting there, right? Next step. Are either of those hybrids plug-in hybrids? No, they're all. Anybody driving an EV? Oh, all right. It's good to know your audience because you're going to call me out on this stuff, right? So, like, you know, you've had your experience already, so you know what it's like. So, thank you, and do help me out. Pitch in. I love personal anecdotes and stories. So, if you have anything to add, I'd love to hear it tonight. All right. So, what I'd like to do is start out with the why, because there's a lot of media going on right now in the world about why we're electrifying everything. And I sort of use the analogy, you know, when dear old Uncle George comes over for dinner, oh, those EVs, you know, they're not ready for prime time yet. No, batteries are no good. What are we going to do with all them batteries? Put them in the landfill? You know, there's like all the myth busting that goes on. So I'm going to try and arm you a little bit tonight with some information for Uncle George, okay? But I think it's important to start with the why. And as I said, you know, you're like one of the examples I picked today, down in the Crow's Nest Pass, the government is lifted the moratorium on mining coal. So, you know, yes, it would provide jobs, but you know what we're forgetting is, of course, the devastation that that's going to cause, not only to the local area, but then what happens to all that coal when they burn it. Now, fortunately, here in Alberta, we've turned off our last coal plants for electricity generation, and turned them into gas plants, but okay, slightly better. But I think it's important to talk a little bit about what is happening. Why is this electrification movement happening? And, you know, what it's doing to the earth and to us. And I know I'm sort of preaching to the choir here a little bit, especially when I look around and see someone who's in the audience tonight. But I think it's important that we do think about this because it's super, super important. It's what started this whole movement in the first place. And so here we are in Canada. We love our country, getting a little more patriotic more recently. And, you know, we have a healthcare system here that we all pay for. And so here's the irony of the whole thing. We've been burning fossil fuel for manufacturing, for electricity generation, for transportation, you name it. We've been burning stuff for a long, long time. And we're starting to realize that burning stuff's not really good for us, right? It's hard on our health, as I pointed out up there. And so why would we do that? It's the worst science experiment you could ever think of. We burn all this stuff, make ourselves sick, and then put ourselves in hospital and have to pay for it. And it's especially ironic when there is an alternative to that. We don't have to do that. And so that's the electrification side. And I'm gonna go quick through these because, so you remember a guy by the name of Al Gore? The inconvenient truth. He was running for president, wasn't he? I think at that time, way back, and he had lost by the hanging Chad, right? Wasn't that it? The hanging Chad in Florida. Anyway, so what was he talking about? The inconvenient truth. So I just wanted to do a quick refresher on why CO2, the greenhouse gas, is a problem. So when the sun shines on the earth, long wave radiation comes down, hits the earth, warms the ground. Short wave radiation radiates back up from the ground, and that's what heats the atmosphere. Since forever, and shall we give her a name? Nothing like personifying Mother Earth. Should we call her Mother Earth? Mother Earth looked after herself until the Industrial Revolution came along. And we started burning stuff, not just wood and sticks and fireplaces, but a lot of stuff, right? And so we put CO2 into the atmosphere, and now that regulation system the Mother Earth had to keep the Earth in balance was wrecked. And now the shortwave radiation can't get out back into space and keep the temperature of the Earth at a constant temperature. And so that's what we're having now, is we're slowly but surely raising the temperature of the Earth. So what was inconvenient about the truth that Al Gore was talking about? Well, you can't beat chemistry. Chemistry is pretty solid. It's got rules. When you burn a liter of gas, you create 2.5 kilograms of CO2. You can't change that. And as long as you're burning gas or diesel, that's what's going to happen. Now, the auto industry would say, oh, we're doing great. We have made these gas engines so efficient now. Look at the liters per 100 that we can get out of these vehicles now. And it's actually, I grew up in the 60s. It was pretty bad, right? And now the engines are way more efficient. But what did we do with those engines? We put them into SUVs and pickup trucks, not cars like we used to. And so we put heavier vehicles on the road with, yes, more efficient engines, but we're burning more fuel than ever. And so that's the inconvenient truth, is you can't escape the chemistry. As long as you're burning gasoline, you're putting CO2 into the atmosphere, along with all those other nasty little bits of things that come out, soot and volatile organic compounds, etc. And look at the 1 year of driving. It's 3 times a car's weight. I mean, can you imagine? That's the thing about CO2 and a lot of this stuff, right? You can't see it, right? The car goes down the road, steam maybe on a cold day, but you can't see the exhaust per se. But what if when all of our cars and trucks and everything else was going down the road and it emitted a purple plume of smoke? Maybe not even toxic smoke, just purple plume of smoke. And every car that went down the road laid down more smoke and more smoke. Do you think as a society we would tolerate that? No matter how bad we needed transportation, we'd want to clean that up, wouldn't we? Well, we actually do have stuff coming out of those tailpipes. And just because we can't see it doesn't mean it isn't there. Oops. Now, usually I put this slide a little further along in the presentation, but I want to address an issue that comes up. Good old Uncle George at the table again, right? What are we going to do with all those batteries? And so just quickly looking at gas, it's an unsustainable form of fuel because we know that once we burn it, it's gone. We can't recycle it in any way. We have to go and dig up more, refine it, and burn it again. And it's a finite resource. We know that when the gas is gone, the oil is gone, that's it for that. So that's a bit dumb. Whereas if we electrify and we go to battery powered vehicles, well, people will say, oh, well, what do we get? We're going to have to replace all those batteries and then we're going to bury them in landfill. No, we are not. Okay, so the first thing that's going to happen to the batteries is we're going to repurpose them. So wind, solar, the wind doesn't always blow, the sun doesn't always shine. So along with those renewables, we need storage. It could be pumped hydro, it could be lots of different things, but a lot of it is going to be batteries. And it could be commercial batteries for big installs, or it could be batteries at your home. And where would we get them? Well, we could get them new, but we could also take them from the EVs that don't need them anymore. So when the battery in my Nissan Leaf, which is a 40 kilowatt hour battery, is down to less than 50%, probably the car won't be a viable car for me to drive anymore. But the battery will still have 20 kilowatts of capacity left in it. And it can store that energy And it could be used along with, say, a bunch of different ones, stack them up, and you could have quite a bit of storage. So the first thing we're going to do with the big batteries is going to repurpose them into storage. And then, no, we're not going to put them in landfill. We're going to recycle them. And there are companies, one's called Redwood in the States, another one in Canada is called Li-Cycle, and there's a couple others. And these are big companies who are looking for these batteries because for them, it's money. And they're going to take those batteries, and over 95% of the products that are in those batteries are going to be recycled. The lithium is going to go back to lithium cake. The cobalt will come out. The copper will come out. All of the minerals will come back out. And so unlike gasoline, which we burn it, it's gone, poof, we can take these batteries and we can put them around in a circular economy and keep them going around and around. And at some point, possibly, we won't have to go back to the mines and get more stuff, right? We'll just keep that going around and around. Now, there is that little 5% on the end. At some point, it's going to catch up, right? It's a long way off. So that's for Uncle George when he talks about, what are we going to do with all these batteries? We're going to recycle them. And so it's a good story on that side. And just one last look at where the greenhouse gases come from. If you're trying to solve a problem, you could solve the little ones first, but you haven't really accomplished a lot. You take a look at when we're burning stuff to do what? Well, heavy industry, we're making stuff, that's 11% of the problem. Heating and cooling our buildings, 13%. Running the diesel tractor up and down our fields to grow crops, 10%. Hauling stuff to the dump, 7%. Electricity, 7 and a bit. But look at the big two. Oil and gas is number 1, and transportation is number 2. So if you want to fix something, try the big ones first. Now, we can't fix oil and gas. Well, we sort of can. They say they are. But let's stick to transport because that's what we know for sure. So on transport side, to be fair, that 22%, that's planes, trains, boats, on highway tractor trailer, and you and me driving around in our cars and light duty pickups. So we're about half of that when you look at it. Planes are only 2%, it's not a lot. Boats are only 2%, despite them burning the nastiest stuff you've ever seen. But cars are light duty vehicles. They make up a huge hunk of all that transportation greenhouse gas emission. So if you want to fix something, that's a good one to start with. And so now we can. And the modern EV has only really been around about 13 years, although electric cars have been around for over 100 years. There used to be actually more EVs than there were gas cars originally. Another one that from Uncle George will be, you're just plugging into a dirty grid. You're not cleaning anything. Well, Uncle George, no. If you take a look at Canada as a whole, 60% of our electricity generation comes from hydro. BC, hydro. Manitoba, hydro. Ontario, 30% hydro. Lots of nukes. Quebec, hydro. Newfoundland, Labrador, hydro. Alberta, well, we're working on it. As I said off the top, we closed the coal fires and we converted them to natural gas. So that's way better. No more coal being burned to generate electricity in Alberta. And the good news is, as we clean our grid up here in Alberta, if you buy an EV today, as you did, then that EV is going to get cleaner and cleaner as we clean our grid up. Your gas car, not so much. As it gets older, gets sloppy, it burns more fuel, it costs you more money, it just gets more expensive and dirtier. But your EV gets cleaner as we clean up our grid. Probably where we're going to end up in 8, 9, 10 years is nukes in Alberta. Sadly, but whatever. Okay, so another good thing about our electricity is we make it right here. Now, here in Alberta, when I first did this slide, it was generated in Ontario. A lot of the fuel, diesel and gas back in the east, doesn't come from Canada. It comes from Saudi and Venezuela. So that's our dollars and our jobs leaving the country every time we gas up the car. Not so much here in Alberta. Yes, we do refine at Edmonton. If you've been up there, you know you can see the refineries. The electricity here in Alberta isn't as low emitting as other parts of the country, but it's still not too bad. It's still way cleaner to plug your EV into the Alberta grid than to drive your gas car. And the more you drive your EV, the cleaner it gets. And we have a surplus at night. That seems sort of strange because you think, well, we turn all our lights on at night. But actually, a lot of industry settles down at night, and we don't use as much electricity at night. Back in Ontario, it was a big problem because we have nukes back there, and you can't turn the nukes down. The suckers just run flat out all the time, producing what they call baseload power. And it was expensive, and then sometimes we didn't need it. So we spilled it to the Americans. We literally gave it to them. It was crazy. Still do it. Anyway, we had the surplus at night, and even here in Alberta, we do the same. So wouldn't it be cool if we could use that? I mean, when you think about it, where does your car sit most of its life? In the driveway. When? At night. So if you could plug in at night and charge your battery overnight, you could use some of that surplus energy that we have right here in the province. Good deal. So I noticed I didn't get to the cost. I skipped that one, didn't I? But I mean, generally speaking, you think about gas prices. 1 week it's $1.65. Next week it's $1.45, and it's $1.55. Gas prices are all over the place, right? Whereas your electricity rate, pretty stable for the most part, and some good deals out there too if you get on the right provider, that kind of thing, because of the way electricity is sold in Alberta. So you can get some pretty cheap power. And so I'm not going to say it's low cost, but it's lower cost than gasoline, that's for sure. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. So locally made, low cost, low emitting, and we have a surplus of it. So makes sense. Let's use it. So when I was growing up, and I'm looking around the room, there's a few young folks in here too, but I grew up in the 60s, and there were only two circles on this graph in the 60s, the economy and society. The expression actually, back in Ontario with the auto industry, what's good for GM is good for the country. In other words, if people are out there building cars, employed, there's food in the fridge, there's cars in the driveway, schools are getting built, hospitals are getting built. What's good for the economy is good for society. But we forgot one very important thing, Mother Earth, right? And so we're starting to figure that out now. We cannot keep polluting our water, poisoning our air, and burying things in the ground. Oh, sure, we bury it in the ground, we think, oh, that's it, out of sight, done, won't have to deal with that anymore, right? Sort of how I feel about carbon capture and storage, but whoops, I digress. Anyway, but now we understand the importance of that air and water and clean, the clean mountain environment that we have here in the Bow Valley. That's what everybody pays to come here for. Even if you're a resident, you probably came here because you love it here. Everybody else wants to come here because of the clean water, the clean air, and to see the, the flora and fauna. Well, if we don't take care of that green circle, we're in big trouble. So it pays us in dividends to electrify when we can. And the sweet spot, I guess I can't reach it, is right there, right? If we do it right, we can have the sweet spot on all of these decisions that we make. But when it's time to make those decisions in the boardrooms or in the municipalities, they have to consider the big green circle. And that's what electrification is all about. Okay, thus endeth the lesson on the environment. So let's get into EVs. And so as I said off the top, this is sort of your meeting. And so if you have any specific questions about EVs, please do pipe up and let's talk about those. I thought though that one topic which is sort of happening right at the moment is people, of course, are more and more interested in EVs, but they're a little nervous about going to a full-blown electric car, full battery. Maybe they only have one car. Maybe they live in a condo and they don't have anywhere to plug in. Maybe they travel a lot to visit grandma who's in Edmonton or Saskatoon or wherever the heck, right? And they're just a little nervous about having an EV as their only car or the car that they're going to have to do all this traveling, et cetera, with. And so people are looking at plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, PHEVs. And they go, okay, I can drive all around town on the battery, but if I need to go to Edmonton, I just drive it, and if I need gas, I just put gas in it like I did my old car. Yeah, that's a very relevant conversation around the dinner table when you're discussing what's the next vehicle going to be. And I'm not going to pick sides here. I'm just going to talk about what they are, and then allow you to have the information so that you can go and make your own decision. Okay. So quick review of a gas car. Lots of bits, right? You've got an engine, and you know, think about an engine, what it's doing, it has pistons that are going up and down, and these explosions are taking place inside the engine, thousands of them in a minute. If it wasn't for that head bolted on with many, many bolts, the head would blow right off the engine. That engine is literally trying to blow itself up every time you start it up. Crazy to think about. And of course, we put an exhaust system on that so we can't hear all the ruckus, right? Oh, purrs like a kitten. We have a transmission. If you have never seen a transmission apart on a bench, it is a thing to behold. I have never seen so many parts in my entire life. Millions of parts, well, thousands. It's a very busy piece of kit. Fuel injection system to bring in fuel, gasoline tanks, fuel pumps, just a ton of stuff in there. And yes, electronic control modules. But yeah, a lot of, and most of it takes some sort of maintenance at some point in time. And we all know about that because we've all lived with gas cars and we've all had to do the maintenance, right? Okay, well, let's take a look at what's in an EV. Yes, great big stinking battery, huge thing, probably about this thick. It's the full width of the car. It'll run from just behind underneath the driver all the way to the back seat. Sometimes it's double stacked up underneath the back seat. To get it all in, it's way down low in the floor. It weighs hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds. Although the good news is that's nice and low in the car, so the car has a nice stable center of gravity. You'll have an electric motor. There is no transmission in an EV. It doesn't need gears per se. There's so much torque in an electric motor that it's just solidly connected all the way through the drivetrain right to the wheels. There is no clutch to disengage it. There is no torque converter. When you come to a stop, the electric motor just stops. And when you go, you press the accelerator pedal and the electric motor just starts to turn, turns your wheels, and off you go. So you don't need all that other gubbins in the middle that you need with a gas car. Yes, you do have a cooling system, just like a gasoline car. Usually the motor, the power electronics, and the battery all have glycol circulating around through it, you know, to keep it from freezing, water and glycol mix. But yeah, and an onboard charger. So we tend to think of those things we see out that we plug into. We call those chargers, but actually the chargers in the car, those are just fancy switches out there with credit card taps and things like that to make them turn on. The charger's in the car, and it takes the AC power off the grid, just like when you're plugging in your laptop. There we are. So this is taking AC power, turning it into DC power, and sticking it into my battery. That's what that little charger box in purple down there does. The same thing, takes the AC off the grid, turns it into DC, and fires it into the battery. And then when you press the accelerator pedal, the energy comes back out of the battery, goes into the DC-DC converter, changes it to AC, and feeds it to the motor. The motor's AC. And that's the way pretty much all electric cars work. So the motor, totally sealed, never touch it. The power electronics, completely sealed, never touch them. The battery, completely sealed, never touch it. No maintenance on any of those three components. Other than the cooling system, yes. But generally speaking, that's just a rad flush, is what we're all used to, right? So very simple stuff. A lot of computers, little black boxes all over the place, yes. But I mean, gas cars have those too. It has brakes, so brake fluid, but gas cars have that. So very simple and not a lot of maintenance that's required to keep all of that humming, especially in the first 5 or 6 years that you own the car. I'll just speak to my Nissan Leaf as an example. Over 100,000 kilometers on it right now. I've changed the wiper blades once, I think. I've changed the cabin air filter once. I've done 2 brake services where they pull the wheels off, pull the calipers off, to blow out all the guck, lubricate up everything, put it all back together. $200 twice, $400. 5 years. That's it. Pretty good, huh? Now I'm coming up, I'm gonna have to replace the brake fluid. As I would in a gas car, the glycol, that should be flushed out. That I'm like a gas car. But other than that, more wiper blades, I guess. Oh well. So super, super simple. and very low maintenance. And just, you know, to compare, and something we should mention about electric motors as opposed to gas engines. So when we take that liter of fuel that we talked about, how much of that liter of fuel is converted into energy and forward motion? Any guesses on a percentage basis? How much, sir? 60% of the gasoline is turned into forward motion? Anybody else?
30.
30. I'll go with 30. It's about 30. On an EV, how much of the energy, electrons, et cetera, that go into an electric motor, how much is that turned into forward motion? Any guesses? Is it up there? I didn't. Well, I just want to check if you're reading. Okay, that's good. Yeah, there we are. So, I mean, so you're looking at a smaller piece of kit. It's lighter. It's still very energy dense. Look at the power, 180, 400, whatever. I mean, just depends on the car, of course. And efficiency is terrific. And that's one of the reasons why, you know, those batteries, they hold a lot of energy, but still, when you compare it to a couple of gallons of gas, batteries don't have as much energy as those gallons of gas. But because the electric motors are so efficient at turning electrons into forward motion, you don't need as much energy as in a gas car. And then there's the maintenance thing we just talked about. So no oil and filter, no spark plugs, no timing belts, drive belts, no emission inspections. I guess not. Yes.
About maintenance, what about tire wear? Because these vehicles are significantly heavier on average, right? So don't you go through your tires more quickly?
So I still have the same set of all seasons on my Leaf. Now they are pooched and I'm gonna have to replace them in the spring. But over 100,000, now there isn't 100,000 kilometers on the all seasons because I put snow tires on. So I'm swapping twice a year. So there's 50,000 theoretically on each set, right? To say that EVs are heavier than their gasoline car equivalents, yes, I guess so. But the reality is, you know, what the #1 selling vehicle in North America is? The Ford F-150 pickup truck, right? Followed by the Silverado pickup truck. So we drive a lot of really heavy vehicles and we know how to make tires for those. And the same thing applies to EVs. We put tires on them that are low rolling resistance tires. That means they roll nice and easy so that the car doesn't have to use energy to overcome that rolling resistance. But at the same time, the rubber is a little harder. They've still manufactured it so it handles and grips, stops and goes the way it should. But generally speaking, I don't see the tire wear. What has happened is, and this is a Tesla story, because why not, is people bought their Teslas. Why did they buy them? Yes, they bought them to help the environment and all that. They were fast. And they wanted to show all their friends how fast they were. They would go through tires like crazy on those things because they were, you want to see it do 0 to 100 in 3.3 seconds? Watch this. Well, guess what? It's leaving all the tire rubber behind, right? And then they go, wow, I only have 30,000 kilometers on those tires. I need new boots already. That's why, right? They're just driving them hard. You and me, we drive normally. We should have normal wear and tear on those tires. But excellent question. And oh, just one shot towards Edmonton, the government of, we now as an EV owner in the province of Alberta, have to pay an extra $200 for our license plates because we drive an EV. So 100 for the plates and another 200 for taxes. Taxes for, remember what whoever it was? Propaganda, yeah, well, some of that.
No, paying fuel tax.
It's the road.
It was the road. Fuel tax, yes, but the roads, all those EVs are heavier. They're wearing out our roads. And nobody's paying for them through the electricity. So we gotta get the money back to pay for the roads. Seriously? You see what goes up and down our roads every day? Pickup trucks. Like, it's not the EVs wearing the roads out. But anyway, I digress. Again. So, electric motor, quieter, simpler, lighter, smaller, requires less maintenance, reliable. Today, I got into one of our Chevy Equinoxes that we have available for test drive. It's been sitting in my driveway stone cold for a week, not quite. I got in it, I don't even have to press start, put my foot in the brake, that starts it. Boom, up it goes. Don't have to plug it in. I mean, I haven't plugged it in for 5-6 days. So it always starts, super, super reliable. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of kilometers on electric motors. That's why we use electric motors all over the place, because they're so reliable. In this building, as an example, we got electric fans blowing the air around. We got pumps circulating coolant and water through the pool and what have you. We use electric motors because they last a really long time and don't require much any maintenance, particularly in an EV. So it's a very good story when it, you know, it's not like I'm saying, oh, please don't drive gas cars. Let's go back to the horse and buggy. That would be a tough sale, I get it. But I'm saying, let's not drive a gas car. No need to. We have EVs that will do the job for us, and they are a better drive.
So just to clarify, an EV, you never have to plug it in?
No, I just didn't.
Okay.
But I got here with 30% battery too, and you know, like I should be plugging it in soon because it's getting down. It's like you're getting down to a quarter tank of gas. Pretty soon you're thinking about filling it up.
We have to plug in
A block heater.
Oh, the block heater. No block heater. Now, having said that, and this is one of my favorite parts about EVs, is while it's in your garage, because remember, no tailpipe, right? In your garage, I can precondition the car, whether it's plugged in or not, charging or not. I can go on an app or the key fob or whatever, and I can tell the car to turn on its heater, just like remote start for, you know, gas cars. And it'll turn on the heated seats, the heated steering wheel, the heated mirrors, the heated rear window defrost, turn on the heater in the car and make it 21 degrees in there. I can set a timer so it'll do it if I have a regular departure time every day. Great, I just love that. And it'll do it whether it's plugged in or not. Obviously, if it's plugged in, then it's using shore power to run all that stuff, so you're not depleting the battery, but it doesn't take a lot to do that. I mean, you're only running it for 10-15 minutes.
Because one of the concerns I had, I replaced my car a few years ago and I did consider plug-in hybrid. But one of the things that made me hesitate was, I like coming here from Saskatoon to come skiing and, maybe staying in a place where I wouldn't have a warm garage to keep it in, how it would perform sitting overnight in -30 temperature.
As I said, the one I drove today, it's been sitting out, it's been down to -26, -27. You don't have to plug in a block heater like the old gas cars where you needed to keep that coolant warm so that the oil wasn't so thick so that the motor would turn over and actually catch. There is none of that. An electric motor can go down to 60 below. It doesn't care. There's no oil or lubrication in there holding it from turning. It just needs electricity and zing, away it goes.
But with a plug-in hybrid, so it's got both a combustion engine and an electric engine, then you would need to have a block heater for the combustion engine, wouldn't you?
The cool thing about the plug-in hybrid is you plug it in obviously to charge up the battery, and we're actually going to get to a slide and talk about them in a sec. But the way the manufacturers make them is they save a little bit of the battery that you can't see so that it can always operate in hybrid mode, which is gas electric. And usually with hybrids and plug-in hybrids, they start in the electric mode when you're pulling away from a light or in traffic, stop and go or whatever, they always start in the battery. And then if you put your foot into it a little further, it might light up the gas engine, depends on the car. But it will always start in electric mode if it can. And that means it will always start, no matter how cold it is. You don't need to plug it in. Yes, the gas motor may struggle to get going if it's really, really cold, but it has this electric assist helping it along. And so it'll get going eventually. It also has, a lot of them now have an internal heating system, heating and cooling actually, so that when you fire the car up, if it finds that the gas engine is really cold, it will actually help to warm it up before it gets going. So lots of cool tech that helps with that. Yes, Kate?
Yeah, I've had the opportunity the last couple of weeks to have 3 Teslas in my yard and test them in terms of how it goes down, just park there, like you said, there's a misconception about the fact. You start, you don't ever start from. It's like a phone, you turn it on, right? So what I found was the parked cars would lose about 25 kilometers a day. And I could see that on my phone, so I go and take it and charge it. So you never have a problem with starting, forget about that. Totally. The trick is when it's cold, like today I drove, I did 120 kilometers with 116. So basically I didn't lose very much.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. But normally a calculate about 50% you could lose.
Good.
On a cold day, you should be prepared for that. But that's just the range, not the performance. Right? I come from a very warm country, so I hate the cold weather. So when I wake up, I say -25, I start my car to +25. That's the way I work. So this is a feature that you will never have in a gas car. Please don't start your gas car in the garage.
No, there's a good reason why you don't do that, that's
A
for
lot of
sure.
people are doing it right now
Yeah.
in arcades, but you know, it's a different way of thinking.
It is a different way of thinking. It's, you know, we all grew up with gas cars. We sat in the back seat and we watched our parents drive them, gas them, fix them. And when we turned 16, we craved for that driver's license. We just wanted to get out there and drive our own car. And we knew how to do it because we just watched it all happen, right? We absorbed it. But electrics, no, we haven't had that opportunity. The young ones, yes, are gonna see it now. But for the most part, we haven't had that opportunity. And so it's a little bit different. It's not bad different, in my opinion, it's good different, but it's just different. And once you get the difference and you understand it, that's not an issue anymore. You just drive them like a car. Yeah.
First of all, I'm a fan of EVs, but I do want to ask, on the previous slide, you had mentioned that either 90 to 95% efficient. But the Alberta grid is only about 40% efficient. So that's Indian energy coming into the grid. You only get actually 40% showing up at your electrical plumbing. So I mean, the numbers work out that they're almost about the same in terms of overall, for Alberta, for Quebec, or for BC, or for Ontario, it's a different story. So I think, my understanding is that Alberta is probably a wash, but from within the province, which is from the grid,
I can feel that, if we do the life cycle analysis, and including fuel cycle for the electric grid and also, making gasoline. Even in Alberta, it works out to about 2/3 lower emissions, operationally for EVs, because of a lot of stack efficiencies. That 30-35% efficiency on internal combustion is like amazing theoretical in the lab efficiency. If we're talking about on the road, you're talking about loads.
that's entirely.
And then, you know, in EC or something, take that down another, factor of 10, for the difference.
It's a good story, no matter what province. The EV will always come out ahead. It's just some provinces it comes out way ahead, just because of how they generate the electricity. But a good point. The car will actually take the electricity that it's given and take 95% of that electricity and turn it into forward motion. So yes, you know, how did we get it in that electricity in the first place? And of course, that's what the world's trying to figure out. If we're gonna electrify everything, where's it all gonna come from, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, also want to add that 6 solar panels in Alberta is enough power a car.
Just not on the car. Just not on the car.
So
Terrible aerodynamics.
I actually open my chargers to the public, and people come in every weekend and drive.
Giving away the sunshine cake?
Even away the stuff.
Sir.
I have a question about when to charge. You said to charge at night. If you have solar panels on the roof, would it make more sense to charge during the day?
Absolutely, and this is what they're finding in the southern states or southern climates, wherever, where a lot of people like Australia, they have solar on the roof. So they're trying to charge during the day because that's when they're making peak electricity is when when the sun is out. And so they're not saving up for the evening. They're trying to, so, that's a bit tricky because if you go to work every day, you're taking your EV and you're leaving your solar panels behind. So maybe you can charge at work, maybe work has solar on the roof, but definitely, definitely more and more people are putting solar up. And here in Canada, of course it works great. If you can put solar on the roof and run your house and run your car, that's the best world. That's the best case. And now you're not taking energy off the grid, so the grid can use that energy for other things. So yes, if you can do solar, that's wonderful. Yes,
So I get that the electric motor is efficient at, you said minus 60, see?
well,
Fair enough.
it'll start and turn, yes.
In battery though, does its efficiency decrease with temperatures? And the temperature I'm interested in is really more minus 40.
Right, yes. So the short answer is yes. Now I'm gonna make it a long answer because I have to. So batteries, like us, they like 21 degrees C. That's all the fuel economy numbers, all the ranges the manufacturers quote for their cars. That's the temperature that all of this is done at. Hotter is not as bad. You have to get really hot to really affect batteries. That more hotter temperatures and conditions tend to degrade the battery over many, many years. They don't like heat all that much. That's why they have cooling systems in it. But cold, yes, they don't like the cold. And so as you go colder and colder, like 0 degrees C, you might lose 10-15% of your total range on 100% charge of your battery. When you get down to like minus 10, minus 15 degrees, you might lose 20-25% of your battery. When you get down to minus 20, minus 30, we could do minus 35 here, not a problem. Then you might lose, as Kay just said, you might lose 40, maybe almost 50% of your battery. So the car always starts, don't worry about that. Around here, we don't drive all that far, but sometimes we like go to Calgary and other places. And so what it means on a road trip is that you might stop to charge one extra time, as opposed to in the summer, you might have been able to drive from here to Edmonton and not stop at all. That's really the only inconvenience of having cold weather in a battery. And they charge a little bit slower when they're colder, although the manufacturers now are working on preconditioning for the battery. So you either have a button you can push, or you tell the car that you're going to a charger on the navigation, and it goes, oh, well then I'll warm up the battery for you. So it uses the heater in the car to circulate warm coolant through the battery and bring it up to proper, like, summertime temperatures, almost. And now when you plug in, it will charge as quickly as if it's summertime, almost. So that kind of technology exists. There's a couple other tricks that EV owners know to do. The first is not much of a trick. Park it in the garage. So my garage never really gets below 5 degrees C. Even if it's minus 25 out, and I don't know, it depends on your garage. But it's warmer in your garage than it is sitting out in the driveway. So if your garage is full of crap, take it out, get rid of it, sell it, and make space to put your EV inside. That's where your charger is going to be anyway. So you may as well make space for it. So that's a really big help to get it out of the severely cold weather. That helps a lot. Second one, as we talked about earlier, preconditioning the battery on the car before you leave. So if you can, while it's plugged in at home, if you can tell the car, I'm going out in 20 minutes, make it nice 21 degrees inside, and take some energy for yourself and warm up your own little battery too. And it'll do that. And so now when you get in the car and you start it, it goes, oh, I'm not as cold as I thought. Well, I'll give you back 60 more kilometers of range because I'm warmer now. So the computer recalculates based on the temperature of its battery.
How much of a disadvantage do you see for somebody who doesn't have a garage? I mean, have a driveway.
As long as you can plug it in, that's the key. So, and if you can plug it into 220, not just 110, they will charge them 110, but it's very slow, especially when it's cold. But if you have 220, like your dryer or your stove, that's key. If you can't have a level 2 at home and you have to plug in the driveway, that means you're going to be charging someplace else. And you're going to be paying for that charging someplace else. And it's sort of going to blow one of your big advantages, which is the cheaper cost of the fuel.
But that's true more for pure electric, if it's a plug-in
You can charge overnight on 110.
On 110, yes. Yeah, and actually, I use 110 at home because I don't drive all that far, you know, come down to the Safeway every day. You know, even if I go to Calgary, I'll come back with 15–20% of my battery, but I'm not going to Calgary again the next day. It's not a commute for me. So I don't need the full battery by the next morning. So I just plug it into the wall and the battery charges back up to whatever in the morning, and that's enough to get to the Safeway. It's plenty, right? So those are some of the thought processes that you go through. But after a while, you're living with it, it's just becomes like going to the gas station and doing this, you know, like we always have. I'm not gonna dwell too much on this one because it's pretty self-explanatory, but they call this the roller skate or the skateboard. And it's basically what every EV looks like underneath. Whatever body, a truck body, an SUV body, a car body, a van body, whatever, that's what it looks like underneath. In this particular vehicle, it has all-wheel drive, so there's electric motor in the front, electric motor in the back. In all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, there is no drive shaft or propeller shaft that goes from the front to the back. It doesn't need one, right? It just needs a motor here and a motor there. So I did want to dive in just quickly on what's the difference between a hybrid electric vehicle, like a Toyota Prius, or a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. And can you see that very well? Not too bad? Okay. So you're all familiar with the hybrid. Most famous is the Toyota Prius. Honda actually came out 6 months before the Prius, but whatever. And what did they do? They took a gasoline car and they added an electric motor, let's say right here, and a battery, and some computers, which is not shown, lots of computers. And basically, they allowed the electric motor to kick in sometimes to help. So when you're pulling away from a light or in traffic, the electric motor would help you. When you're going stop and go traffic, the electric motor would help. One of the things we haven't talked about yet so far is regenerative braking, which is a characteristic of electric motors. And hybrids have that characteristic. What is it? When you press the accelerator in an EV, you tell the battery to send current to the motor turns, the car goes. What happens when you lift your foot off the accelerator? Well, obviously you turn off the current to the motor, but the car is still rolling. And you remember I said the wheels and the motor are connected. There is no clutch, there is no disconnect. And so that motor is spinning because of the inertia of the car. And it wants to slow down because the motor wants to be at rest. And so it slows the car without using the physical brakes. And it generates electricity. The motor becomes a generator and it puts energy back in that little battery. It is a little battery too. In a hybrid, it's like 1 or 2 kilowatts. But it was enough back in the day for hybrids to all of a sudden get incredible fuel economy. You know, they were, you know, everybody else is running around getting 25 miles to the gallon, and these things are doing 50 and 60 miles to the gallon. Sorry, I went back to gallons. The room might read that okay, though. I think. I don't know. We'll see. So it was quite in advance at the time. Now they were tiny little cars, and they were slow, and you know, they were weird, and so. But who drives a lot of them now? Taxi cab drivers, Uber drivers, people who drive for a living, because they're really good on fuel. So there's a couple people put their hands up and said they have one already, and I'm sure they can attest to that. Well, then some genius decided, well, if a little battery is good, why don't we put a bigger battery in there? Yeah, and reduce the size of the gas tank somewhat. And now we can go further because the hybrids could literally only go a few feet on their battery, and then the gas motor would kick back in. But if you put a really big battery in, maybe you could go 35 kilometers. Maybe you could go 50. The Chevrolet Volt, V for Victor, when it first came out, 2010, it had a 16 kilowatt hour battery and its range was 60 miles, thereabouts. And then the second generation was more. So that was pretty good. You could drive 60 miles just on the battery. Think about your life around the Bow Valley. That would be your day, right? You could go pretty much anywhere in your day and just be on the battery. You get home, plug it into any wall outlet, and by the next morning it was full again. Do it all over. Volt drivers bragged how far they could go without burning gas. It was hilarious. They'd go for months, right, without burning gas. and you ask them what they didn't like about their car, I hate it when the gas engine comes on. So that's the difference between a hybrid electric vehicle and a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, is that to charge the bigger battery, you actually plug it in when you get home. Because it can't just do it by going down hills and slowing down and using the motor as a generator. And so that works for a lot of people when they're one car at home, a little nervous about going full electric. They can do a lot of their day on the battery, a lot. And then they have gas if they want to go to Edmonton or Saskatoon or wherever. Just drive it like a gas car, keep putting gas in it. And then up your battery.
The smaller gas tank, say if you're on a long distance road trip. Does that mean, and you're using gas because you've got a limited range with the electric, does that mean that you have to fill up with gas more frequently with the smaller tank?
Well, I'm probably exaggerating the size of it in this picture. The reality is that hybrids and plug-in hybrids, they'll go like 1,000 kilometers without stopping. They may only go 60 or 80 kilometers on the battery, but then they go into hybrid mode. And you remember earlier on, I was saying the manufacturers actually save a piece of this battery. You can't see it on the gauge on the dash, but they save it for the car. So the car can always operate in hybrid mode, even though the battery is empty. And so they go, long distances, great fuel economy, even though they have a slightly smaller gas tank than a plain gas car. So huge pickup there. And then of course, full battery electric. And I want to talk about one other type of PHEV. And the reason I'm talking about this one is because it's funny how things go full circle sometimes. So this is what's called a range extending electric vehicle. Yes, it's a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. It has a battery, it has a gas engine, it has electric motor or motors, but it works a little bit different in the Volt that I just talked about that GM made, actually was the first one. Now, GM doesn't make the Volt anymore, but this is actually going to be the new Dodge Ram pickup truck. And they were going to make it full EV, and then they thought people are having trouble towing with full electric pickups. Everybody's got an RV, wants to tow an RV. So if you can only go 200 kilometers in an EV towing a trailer, that's not terribly helpful. And so people might not buy that vehicle. So Dodge decided, tell you what, we'll put a gasoline generator on board so that you have gas when you need it. And so the way this vehicle works is your right foot is only connected to the electric motors. So it is, in all intents and purposes, an EV. But when the big battery there, and they're saying 92 kilowatt hours in the middle, when that big battery is pooched, the V6 gasoline generator fires up by the computer tells it to do that. You have no control over it. It just does it. And it makes electricity to go hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kilometers on the gasoline in the tank. But you're still driving it like an EV. And the computer is running the generator for you. It's sort of like the lights going out here in the building and we plugged in a generator to it to power the lights up. That's what the generator is doing here, providing electricity for the electric motors. And so now you don't have a big disadvantage for towing. If the vehicle can go, and these things they're talking about, it doesn't say there, does it? Just like my other slide. They're talking about 700-800 kilometers of range out of this thing. And if it was towing, it would be probably almost half, which is what happens on a gas pickup. But now your 700-800 becomes 350-400 kilometers. Whereas in a full electric, it might have only been 200 kilometers. So this is a great option for people who really need the towing duty. Maybe they're in the service industry and they need to travel a lot. They don't want to be worried about running out anywhere or stopping for 40 minutes at a charger and charging up. They can just go to a gas station and they're going again. So this is becoming quite popular. There was quite a surge. The government got on board, said 2035, no more gas cars. That's it. Can't buy a new gas. 2035. It's going to be EV. now everybody is sort of starting to back off a little bit on that, sadly. And so the plug-in hybrid is sort of the gateway drug to a full electric. People will get that plug-in hybrid, they'll love it, they'll drive it for a while, and then they go, why didn't I buy just a full electric? Now that I know how to do it, it's so easy. But you have to have that, for many, you have to have that middle experience first. And so this is one example of a plug-in hybrid. It's called a range extending. It's the gas generator is a range extender, essentially. That's what they're calling it. And then you have your plug-in hybrid, which it's either the gas or the electric or both together. The computer calls the shot on that, depending on what your right foot's doing. So your right foot is controlling either the gas or the electric, well, mostly the gas motor. Whereas on this one, your right foot is only controlling the electric motors. It's just a different way of doing it. Because of the application, it works better in this particular configuration in the truck application, having a range extender versus a hybrid mode. So you're going to see a lot of that happening. Yes, you'll see the manufacturers still building their EVs, but along beside it, they're going to have these plug-in hybrids that you'll be able to access. Yeah.
So I can appreciate that electric vehicles have fewer moving parts. One of the questions I had was with the plug-in hybrid, you've got two different systems going. Now the electric side presumably still has a few parts, but now you've added a gas motor along with that. I don't know what the reliability is like for plug-ins versus hybrids versus batteries. So can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, it's terrible, actually. Yeah, I mean, you've increased the complexity, haven't you? Yeah, I mean, you took a simple full battery electric and you added all this gasoline complexity, which we're sort of trying to get away from. But because of the utility of a plug-in hybrid, people sort of are gravitating towards that. They have the familiarity of the gas, and then they've got the cost savings on the electric side. But you're right, you still have all the maintenance to do on that gasoline engine, filters and plugs and belts and all that stuff, right? Maybe a little bit less because you're not running the gas engine constantly in a plug-in hybrid. You may drive around for days on the battery and never use the gas motor. And so it's not getting the kilometers of the wear and tear on it that a strictly gas engine would get. But it's still there in the end. Yeah.
Just to follow up on that. So when like on one of the pamphlets there, like there's a plug-in hybrid range of 60. I appreciate that that's 21 degrees. Is that, full, I can get to 110 on the highway and then, or is that, okay, that's around inside Canmore, that's not 60 on the highway, or you're compromising your speed?
So it depends on two things. The brand, depends what the brand has done. If they've made it really easy to run down the highway in full battery mode, then yes, it'll do it. But you're gonna burn the battery up quick because it's smaller, right? And it also depends on the temperature. So we have in our test drive fleet a Volvo XC60 plug-in hybrid. If I were to start it up stone cold right now, it would fire the gas engine right away. I have no choice on the matter. I've told it I only want to start in battery mode, but it says no, too cold. And so that's a manufacturer decision to do that. And so you'll see a lot of that out there. Once things get warmed up, then you could say, okay, go back to battery, and then it will.
You couldn't generalize, like if you said a plug-in, could you go, we live in, and this is all geographical, of course, we live in Canmore, if I work in Banff, I go to work all week, back and forth, with a 50-kilometer range and only use gas on weekends when I chose to go on a road trip.
That's the idea, yeah.
But you just said your cars don't do that.
It won't when it's super, super cold. Right, so there's gonna be times, and again, it'll depend on the manufacturer, what temperature they picked, because it'll be programmed in the car. If it's minus 15 or colder, fire the gas motor. Or if it's minus 5 and colder, fire the gas motor. It'll depend on the brand. That's a question maybe you would ask the salesman knew when you go to buy the car or when you do your research on the car. But you're right. I mean, generally speaking, it might only run the gas motor until the motor warms up to operating temperature. And now you're rolling, your heater's on and it's heated up the car. It'll shut the gas motor off and run the rest of the way to Banff on the battery. So it might only fire it up for 2 minutes or so.
I've got good news and bad news. The bad news is that in about 10 minutes, we should conclude the formal
Yes.
presentation. The good news is, of course, as this gentleman will tell you, that between now and the end of May, the end of March, at any time, you can pepper him in a vehicle, electric vehicle, as you're driving the EV with as many questions as you want, or Edmonton for that matter, that's the service they offer. So can I just invite you to kind of wrap up in the next five to 10, Ron? And
Definitely.
then
Yes.
time for questions, informally at the end, and but we just get at it. April wants to go home, he's our hostess at the library, and we should be close to turning the lights off in about 15, 20 minutes.
Definitely. So just to wrap up, it's my last slide on the EVs piece. And it's just sort of a wrap up of all the things we've talked about. One of the joys of an EV is plugging in and refueling at home. If you can't refuel at home, if you don't have access to a plug, and especially a 220 plug, then maybe you need to get one in. And that might be because you live in a condo or something like that, and then there's just nothing in the underground. And so that's a trip to the condo board, and that's a whole other conversation. But it can be done. Driving an EV is about a sixth of the cost of gas when you're looking at the fuel, just the fuel. It's about a sixth, depends, but generally speaking, that's what it runs into. Very little maintenance, we talked about. Regen braking, that's that cool function of the electric motor being able to slow you down without touching the real brakes. I have the original brakes, 105,000 kilometers on my Leaf, they're mint. They're mint. I probably won't touch them for another 50 or 60,000. And they may make me change them just because they're getting old, not wore out, just old. So that's regen braking coming to your rescue there. When we drove some of these cars across the Rocky Mountains from Vancouver, we were going through Rogers Pass. It was pretty cool because we burned a lot of battery going up the hill. Then we get to the pass, and I love the sign. It says 8% grade for the next 18 kilometers or whatever the heck it is. Regenning all the way down. You watch the range climb up, you watch your battery fill up. It's hilarious, right? It's free using gravity. It's wonderful. Gas car can't do that. Even on a downhill, your gas car is still idling, burning fuel, right? Huge efficiency, but the big, of course, is what I started off with. What's this all about? Why are we doing this? We're trying to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We have an alternative. We have electricity, and we have now the modern EVs, which can go 400, 500 kilometers, maybe a bit less in the wintertime, but it's the charging infrastructure, and that's a whole other conversation as well. That's all out there and happening. And so, yes, we need more chargers out there for road tripping, because as we all start driving EVs, we don't want lineups, right? We need more than 2 or 3 or 4 of them. Tesla, of course, has, they've been putting in 6, 8, 12, 20 at a time in each location. And of course, we're all now switching to the Tesla plug. So, just the way they tried to figure out, should we all use USB-C and not the Mac one? Well, now Tesla won that battle. So it's the better plug, and everybody's switching over to the Tesla plug, including all the chargers out there. And yes, to our wonderful little program courtesy of Biosphere, wouldn't it be cool to spend some time with Edmund and I in a car, take it for a drive, ask all the questions you like on a personal basis? We'll scope out your garage for you and maybe help you figure out where to put your charging station. We'll take you to some of the chargers in town and plug in and show you how that all works. We'll show you the apps that you need to find the chargers, plan routes, start and activate the charging networks, talk about maintenance, talk about your own personal family scenarios, what you need cars for, what you do with them, and what EVs might apply, that kind of thing. So it's a free program. You go on Biosphere's site, go to this part of the site, click on book. We have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We have 2 2-hour sessions each day. We have 3 cars. We have the Volvo EX60 plug-in hybrid that I mentioned, very nice. Has a Orford's crystal shift knob. Gotta see that. And we have 2 Chevy Equinoxes. These are 450, 500 kilometer cars, brand new from GM, latest technology. Got an amazing infotainment system in it that helps you navigate to chargers and things like that. They're SUVs. One is a front wheel drive and one is an all wheel drive. So those are the cars we have to let you test drive. And if you're interested, please do. We'd love to see you and spend time with you. So, yeah, we got maybe 2 minutes and any questions? Okay,
One thing I'd like to add. Electric vehicle is the best car you can ever drive summer or winter. And if you have a dog, the dog will love an electric vehicle.
because you can leave the car running with the dog in it. And yes,
You talked to, about hydrogen fuel cell cars and where.
no. Hydrogen fuel cells have been coming for 50, 60 years. I mean, the first hydrogen fuel cells, and these are things that generate electricity using hydrogen. They were on the Apollo missions, right? To put power into space. So, I mean, they work, the technology's there. There's just a whole bunch of bad things. I mean, it may end up helping us decarbonize air transport and maybe ships. There won't be hydrogen, might be ammonia on ships, but probably we're going to biofuels and that kind of stuff in those areas. Hydrogen is, I know the fossil fuel industry is all pumped about it, but it's a small, tiny molecule. It leaks. You have to store it at 10,000 PSI in tanks wrapped in carbon fiber in your car. Can you imagine storing that in an aircraft? And you're up 30,000 feet and there's these 10,000 PSI bombs sitting in the aircraft? No, thanks. I'm not going on that plane. Yeah, we don't have a distribution system for hydrogen. Yeah, they're thinking, oh, well, we could put it in the natural gas pipes. The natural gas pipes can't keep it. It's too leaky. It leaks out. It's really hard to compress. You have to spend a whole bunch of energy compressing it. Well, why don't we just generate it from wind and solar power, hydrolysis, right? We crack the H2 and the O apart, just putting electricity in, and there goes our H2. We got it. It takes tremendous amount of power to do that. So the round trip efficiency of energy in versus what you get out with hydrogen is really bad, like 30–40%. It's awful. But it's, the optics of water dripping out of a tailpipe as your only emission is tantalizing. Just, we can do that and we got this, right? No more gas or oil. But we haven't figured it out yet. And I don't think we're gonna. All the hydrogen bus experiments that have been going on in the world, Edmonton bought 2, they're done. New Flyer in Winnipeg makes them, and yeah, they're not doing too well. So, in the fleet industry, if the fleet industry can't make it work, it's not gonna work in a lot of other places. Thanks for that one. Yes, yeah, sorry.
Have any other tips for improving your range during the winter, besides the preconditioning and keeping it in your garage? Are there any other ideas?
Yes, a big one. Yeah, I know you're shocked. A big one is slow down. Because in a gas car, when the difference between driving 100 kilometers an hour and 120 kilometers an hour is 20% more fuel we use. Doesn't matter what temperature is. We use 20% more fuel. Energy is energy. So the same would apply in an EV, even with its efficiency. At 120 kilometers an hour, you're going to burn a lot more electricity than at 100. Or I drive 105 when I'm going to Calgary. Just enough to tick off the truck drivers, sadly. They can't get past me. They can't, Anyway, so slowing down is a big one. Turn the heat down in the car. Do you need it to be 25? Probably not. You're full with your hat and glove, 1920 is perfectly comfortable. And now the heating system in the car doesn't have to use as much energy to keep this tremendous temperature in the car that you don't really need. Unless it's a raging blizzard, you need to keep your window clear, of course. Edmund, any more?
Especially if you have a panoramic glass roof, you're leaking about 500 extra watts in heat loss. So if you have a panel roof, close the shade, if it hardly comes with shade, get one of those for 4 months as well.
Yeah,
And then tire pressure.
which is, a gas car trick too. Keep the tires up.
When temperature gets colder, your tire pressure is going to drop because gas loss.
Yeah. So, low rolling resistance, if the tires are a little squishy, car's gonna use more energy to go down the road. If you blow them up to the proper temperature, pressure, I should say, then less energy and you increase your range. Snow tires are gonna take, some energy off, sadly, in the wintertime. Driving through slush and, snowpack roads is gonna take a little bit more energy than a nice sunny day on a dry pavement. But just things to be aware of.
What's the used market like right now on EVs?
Pretty good, actually, pretty good. It was horrible during COVID because there was no new, and so used prices went way up. But that's all sort of settled out now, and there's lots of new, and so therefore people are getting out of their old EV and getting into the new shiny ones.
Who do you look for?
There's a company in Calgary called Go Electric. Super nice guy by the name of Ryko, he runs it, and he's, we all know the sort of the stories behind used car dealers. Ryko is not that. He scavenges the whole country looking for good used product. He has it on his lot. You can go on the Go Electric website and see his inventory and pricing at any given time. And then you can go and test drive it. He has a cool program where he'll give you the car for 3 days or whatever, and you can take it home and live with it for a couple of days, getting used to charging it, driving it, seeing how it fits your family. And if it's right for you, he'll sell you the car. If it's not, you give it back and try another one. So Go Electric in Calgary, it's a good one. So yeah, lots of used out there, Auto Trader, Kijiji Auto, just click electric, make sure, that's electric, all electric, if that's what you're looking for.
So listen, let's do this. Let's do the closing ceremony thing. So if you gave me, your email address, we'll give people just email you this link, which tells you about the EV with your driving program, and you can just plug into the program, between now and the end of March. And you heard, thanks to Ron and Edmund, who are the drivers, there's no question they can't answer. Amazing, it's a camera thing. There's so much, there's so many amazing people in the room who know so much about so much, and it's typical camera. So both Edmund and Ron can help you out here. We'll send you that link. Also, I'll just mention that in Banff for 3 weeks and in Canmore for 3 weeks, we'll have this plug and drive program in the early fall, a chance for you to do that, for a whole lot more people to do that. Not in the wintertime, in the summertime, and it's just, and it'll be this kind of approach on steroids. There'll be hundreds and hundreds of people who get a chance to drive that. And the only other thing I want to say is, grateful I am to live in a place where people with smart hands like you. And yes, go ahead.
Could I add one plug?
Yeah.
Both of us are also going to be part of the team that is running the electric vehicle test drive program at the Calgary Auto Show in March. We're going to have, we think, about 20 vehicles and a test track on Stampede grounds. So if you come out to the auto show, you can come and try all of them in a sequence as long as you only get that one.
Yeah, fill your boots with electric vehicle know-how and hey, ladies and gentlemen, join me and say a big thanks to Ron Grove.
I have a special guest in the audience and I want to just give her a bit of a plug. Rhiannon Pomeroy is here, and Rhiannon runs Canmore Cat Care. She lovingly looks after my cat whenever I have to go away. So if you have a cat and do you do dogs? Cats. Dogs too? Sometimes. Cats for sure. Bunnies,